Cinema Worms.
Discussing everything from Grima Wormtongue to the Shy Halib.
I'm Sabib.
And I'm Lindz.
And this is Cinema Worms Podcast.
So I'm going to be talking about The Shepherd and the Bear, which was a documentary directed by Max Keegan in his feature-length directorial debut about essentially a shepherd in the Pyrenees seeking a successor to tend his flock. We begin with people like manhandling. I've written sheep handling ? Sheep around, shearing them, etc. No dialogue to begin with. Everyone seems cheerful. They're just getting on with their lives and their jobs. Then a helicopter potters into view, which is quite unexpected, and it's carrying a tremendously huge box. And there's a teenage boy who we will later meet watching it through binoculars as it kind of flies over the hills. It sets down its crate. Somebody kind of fiddles with the clasp and then quickly gets out of there, and we're thinking of what's going on. And then unexpectedly, a large bear kind of bursts out and runs into the forest. As we were told at the start of this film, bears were eliminated from this mountain range in 2004, and the French government has decided to introduce a rewilding project, adding bears back into nature to, so they say, protect the flora and fauna long term and create like a different kind of ecosystem that more closely mimics what was there in the past, so they say. This documentary follows a gruff farmer, Yves Raspeau, who is upset about the bear project, as well as a teen boy, Cyril, who is obsessed with the bears and wants to become part of the environmental police. Now, there is a lot of animal harm and death in this documentary, as you might expect from a film about agricultural life. We see the destruction that a bear has wrought in the night, either killing a sheep outright or eating it partially and leaving it barely alive for a farmer to discover and put down. Amongst other things, there is what I can only describe as a pig execution scene that felt very uncomfortable to watch, and yet it has to happen because we see them eating the meat afterwards. This is a regular part of rural life, taking lives to support others, and so everyone is treasured and used appropriately. In the farmers' opinions, the bears and the presence of the bears throw off that balance. And about halfway through the film, when a local hunter is attacked and badly injured by a bear, killing it then in self-defense, they all demand the right to do the same. Which you would think is pretty reasonable, but it gets pushed back against because he has then attacked or caused the destruction of, quote unquote, a protected species. I don't think that would really hold up in court, because it was either like, if you don't kill this bear, you're gonna die. And I think there's something to be said for yourself being a protected species in that moment. And through young Cyril's eyes, we see the opposite, the beauty of nature and the bears themselves. And we remember that the bears were eradicated by people in the first place. So don't animals deserve to exist in their own right, and not simply because we let them? Like, where do we draw the line here? It's a tough concept, especially when you think of the larger problem of climate change and nature in general. We change the planet by imposing our wills and lives on it. But we, when we try to attempt to revert it to any earlier kind of more natural, quote unquote, state of affairs, it has to be thought through really carefully. And it made me think of this book of essays about climate change that I read called Uncommon Ground by William Cronon. And it argues that what we think of as nature is really just kind of overdone gardening. Real nature is a series of wild cycles where animals and plants die and are replaced. And we can't seem to stop ourselves destroying things. And we can't seem to stop meddling afterwards either. It's an interesting book, and it's a fair argument applied to this film. Now, Max Keegan is careful not to come down on any particular side here. There's no fourth wall breaks, there's no interviews like directed to camera like you often see in documentaries. He only observes and films what is there. And the camera isn't afraid to linger on people after discussion, whether heated or civil, and there are several of both. And of course we get some incredible, like, jaw-dropping shots of the landscape itself. I saw the screener at home and I ended up turning off all the lights to try to do my best to recreate a cinematic environment and enjoy it fully. It's really gorgeous and crisp. And I thought this was really interesting. The name of the mountain range, the Pyrenees, Pyrene in mythology. Now, Hercules apparently was like violated the hospitality code and raped his host's daughter, and she, Pyrene, goes off into the woods and gives birth to a serpent. And she's afraid that her father will be angry, so when she's in the woods, she's like telling her stories to the trees, and she attracts the attention of wild animals who then tear her to pieces. And so the mountain range was named after her. And I thought that is a particularly interesting piece of mythology to consider here when we think about the subject of this film. Now, towards the end, somebody from the French government says that killing a bear is illegal. They call it poaching, and they say that any bears killed should be replaced. And the question that this made me ask, and I think most of us will be asking at this point, although it's not sort of said out loud right then, is, are dead sheep and possibly dead people just a natural result of that decision? The farmers claim that the decision has been made far away from rural life without any consultation with the actual people who live there, and it seems like a naive dream. And it's hard to argue with that, especially when you see just like multiple dead sheep, and you hear, people being attacked. Even the committee who kind of takes some questions from they seem to be just very contemptuous and on the verge of laughter a lot of the time. So it is hard to not be on the farmer side, but that is why you have the presence of Cyril here. He's a teenager. He's just so fascinated by nature. He's constantly in the woods. He's got his parents are like begging him to do his homework so he can pass his exams, but he just wants to be in nature and he wants to be part of that. He thinks the bears are beautiful. He's just amazed at them. And when you do actually get to finally see footage of the bears in the wild, you are kind of like, wow, that's, they owned this mountain range before. They were there before humans were, in this part. And should not they be allowed to kind of exist as well? Like, where does human will and our desire to impose ourselves on our landscape end? How careful should we be, and why? And also, you would think that, it would make sense if you were going to do something like this, that you actually go and speak to the people on whom you're imposing this decision. That would probably be a good idea, rather than making it in a city far away from the actual terrifying feelings of having bears prowling around and having to electrify your fences and stuff. So really, really interesting documentary. I definitely recommend it. I'll be thinking about this for quite a while.